I'm Scott, and this is Sam. And if you are looking for an iconic, rugged individual and his equally iconic, rugged, and slightly call-of-the-wild best friend to host your show, then you are probably not looking for me or Sam. But if you're looking for someone who's sort of a combination between Bob Newhart and maybe Mike Rowe thrown into a blender and his very goofy Doberman sidekick, we should talk. I'm Scott. This is Sam. Sam is 5 years old. I'm a lot older than 5. And Sam is part of a trio, but for me to be sitting here with 3 dogs would probably be a little crazy, considering they're all roughly Sam's size or larger. I grew up hanging out at dog shows. I was a junior handler. I have bred, raised, and shown best in show champions. Traveled everywhere from San Francisco to St. Augustine with dogs.
The most important dog, I think, in any dog lover's life is their very first dog. And our very first dog was, of course, our family dog. It was Zoot. And he was a black lab, German Shepherd mix. He was awesome in every way you can imagine. Well, let me introduce you to our current crew. You've got Sam, who you've already met, Boris, who's our clumber, and Maisie, who's our other Doberman. They're a pretty unique group of dogs. They each have such distinct personalities. Sam and Boris are pretty much the odd couple of the dog world. I think that's about the only way you could explain it. Sam is very caring, very attentive, wants to make sure he does everything right, very concerned about the fact that you're happy with him. Boris, on the other hand, is a pretty happy-go-lucky dog. Really doesn't care, you know, everything, whatever's fun. And then you have Maisie. Maisie is the pretty princess. She's pretty much a complete hedonist and probably the smartest of all 3. So when you put the 3 of them together, it's definitely a unique group of personalities.
Now, I was born and raised in Las Vegas. My dad was a musician, so I grew up hanging out in hotel showrooms. I think it was probably kind of inevitable that I would end up in entertainment myself. I ended up in theater, and that's where I met my wife, who is probably more obsessed with dogs than I am, if possible. Together we have raised and shown and bred best in show champions. We have shown in virtually every state in the United States. We have traveled all over the United States, sometimes via motorhome with many dogs. And at one point in our life, I think we had up to 10 dogs in our kennel. In addition to that, of course, we're very devoted to rescue. We've raised a lot of rescue and adopted a lot of rescue animals as well. As I mentioned, my wife is a little more dog obsessed, a little more dog focused than I am myself, which leads to a slightly different methodology in terms of how we deal with the dogs in general. I guess you'd say I'm a little more Waldorf school, maybe Montessori school of dog training, while she's a little more disciplined, a little more structured, a little more focused. Hence the reasons we've kind of steered towards search and rescue with the dogs, agility work, therapy work as well. They've also got some rally titles on them. I tend to be a little more laid back myself. I just kind of enjoy doing what I'm doing right now, which is hanging out with the dogs, meeting people with the dogs, traveling with the dogs. My wife and I love to travel, whether we're traveling for dog shows or just traveling to entertain ourselves in general. We love to travel by car the most, and we take the dogs with us. Not necessarily because we always want to take the dogs with us, but it's much easier than kenneling them. To kennel them would probably cost us twice as much as the trip would itself. But I can give you 3 really important tips whenever you're traveling with your pets. Number 1, bring your own water. You don't want to have them trying any kind of water that's going to upset their stomachs in any way, shape, or form. Plenty of paper towels. You never know when you're going to need them for cleanup. And most importantly, right, Sam? A lot of Imodium. Traveling with 3 dogs with the squirts, something nobody wants to do. I guess if you brought me in, you'd have somebody who is used to working with a camera. You'd have somebody who's used to interviewing and working with people. Lord knows, as an actor, I've done 5 billion auditions and interviews at various points in time in my life. And you'll have someone who's very used to working with animals. So, that is the Scott and Sam, Maisie and Boris story. We'd love to talk with you. we're right here in Boston, so have your people call Sam's people. We'll talk with you then.